The giant King Og, of Bashan. King Og, a giant larger than Goliath, is mentioned 22 times in the Bible across 6 different biblical books. He was king of Bashan, a kingdom, along with the Amorite kingdom, acted as gateways into the Promised Land. Bashan, east of the Dead Sea. Og's kingdom extended from the Jordan Valley up to Mount Hermon in the north and down to Gilead in the south. This kingdom overlapped the territory of what would become the nation of Israel. After spending 40 years wandering in the wilderness, Israel began to reapproach the Promised Land. On their way, they met and defeated Og and Sihon. The Bible details, Og and the giants of Canaan. Og slept on an iron bed that was 13.5 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Moses and others saw this bed after they killed the giant King Og. The Promised Land was full of powerful kingdoms, peoples, and even giants. Israel sent 12 spies into Canaan. They came back with dread because they had spotted 3 giants in Hebron, Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak. These giants terrified 10 of the 12 scouts. One of the scouts named Caleb, however, believed that Israel could still enter into the land, and he later proved it when he drove out the sons of Anak from Hebron. Yet before Caleb's victory, 10 of his spy companions saw only doom. They told Moses, "The land, through which we have gone to spy, is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim." The story of Genesis 6:4, of the Nephilim, apparently held deep sway on the hearts of the Israelites. These 3 descendants of the Nephilim were of great height and the scouts felt like grasshoppers in their presence. Who are the giants of Canaan? According to Moses, these giants were generally called Rephaim. Each people in Canaan had their own name for these giants. Moses records that the Moabites called the Rephaim, the Ammonites called the Rephaim Zamzumim. Moses also states that Og the king of Bashan as a remnant of the Rephaim. The land of Bashan was so associated with the Rephaim that it was called the land of Rephaim. Moses also confirms that the sons of Anak, the Anakim, were Rephaim. With this Bible's explanation, it is easy to understand the fear of the 10 scouts in Numbers 13. They saw 3 of presumably many Rephaim. These 3 giants made them look like grasshoppers. Remember, Og was something like 12 feet tall. And these Rephaim were warriors and kings. Numbers 13 says that the sons of Anak is from the Nephilim, whom Genesis 6:4 reads as mighty men. These Nephilim were warriors of great height and strength. Partially confirming that interpretation, the Septuagint translates the word Nephilim as giants. Og was around 12 feet tall. If you think about how tall a 6-foot man is, then double that size. These giants led kingdoms, fought wars, and lived normal lives. The Bible doesn't speak of giant women. Makes you wonder. Og was an Amorite by birth and the king of Bashan. He lived in Ashtaroth and Edrei, and he had a kingdom that reigned over 60 cities in the region of Argob. Each city had walls and a gate. In addition, the 60 cities, there were also a number of villages without walls fell under his control. Without exception, Israel devoted the entire kingdom of Bashan to destruction, eliminating him and his line forever. Since both Og and Sihon were Amorites by birth, they also have a unique place within the Abrahamic covenant. When God made his covenant with Abraham, he told Abraham his descendants would live in Egypt for 400 years. Afterwards, God explains that Israel would return to Canaan because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Og and Sihon left a deep imprint on Israel's history. Moses reminds Israel that God defeated Og and Sihon, and so God can do it again. Og and Sihon are mentioned centuries and as famous kings of the land of Gilead. Nehemiah brings Og and Sihon up as well as examples of God giving over people to Israel. Og and Sihon are the only 2 named kings of Canaan that praises God for defeating. In Psalm 136:19-20, the psalmist only names 2 mighty kings, Og and Sihon, that God defeated. These 2 kings were gateways into the Promised Land, and God defeated them both. And that's why Israel can trust in God's faithfulness. In short, Og was a fearsome enemy of God's people whom the Lord defeated. His name also regularly appears next to Sihon, probably because Sihon conquered the Moabites in dramatic fashion, Num 21:26, and the Bible even records a ballad that the singers sang about Sihon's victory, Num 21:27-30. Hence, Sihon too was a mighty warrior, although the Bible does not identify him as a giant, but see Amos 2:9-10. While we know little about Og as a person, we know quite a bit about him as an example of God's faithfulness and strength to conquer even the mightiest of men. Og was a giant, one of the Rephaim. And so the last piece of the puzzle in identifying Og is to explain what a Rephaim is. What are Rephaim? Rephaim are giants of men connected in some way to Nephilim. The Greek Old Testament, Septuagint, as well as many ancient interpreters agree that these individuals are giants. Even in Abraham's time, Rephaim lived in Canaan. In 1 Chronicles 24-8, a number of Rephaim lived in Philistia, such as Sappai and an unnamed man with 6 fingers and 6 toes. Interestingly, we learn that Goliath and his brother Lami were also descendants of the Rephaim. Collectively, these figures were descended from the giants in Gath. See my video on the 4 brothers of Goliath. David giving thanks to God after the death of Goliath. The Gathite Rephaim did not reach the height of Og. Goliath was over 9 feet tall. The Dead Sea Scrolls and other ancient versions record him as being only over 6 feet tall. Whichever number is correct, Goliath is shorter than Og. This might be because the line of giants had effectively been severed when Israel conquered the land. The Gathite Rephaim perhaps were a minor and smaller. The Bible speaks of the Rephaim as dead spirits, or spirits who live among the dead. Scripture sometimes mentions the possibility of their rising. In any case, somehow the word Rephaim came to refer both to ancient giants and also to the dead. This association with the dead may suggest how fearsome these Rephaim were, or it may be an accident of translation. While it may be tempting to speculate further about the connection of the Rephaim to the Nephilim, we should practice restraint. What we can know for sure is that the Bible clearly associated the Rephaim with giants. Og the king of Bashan was an enormous and powerful giant. His iron bed was about 13.5 feet long. Moses describes this huge bed to show how huge Og was, and thus how God can even deliver Israel from the mightiest of enemies. Scripture frequently points back to God defeating Og, as well as Sihon, to show that God can defeat fearsome enemies. If he defeated Og, he can put a stop to any other enemy. And that might be the most important thing we can learn from the story of Og king of Bashan. As Moses told Israel, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you."
To hear more stories of the giants of the Bible, go to our video, Goliath and his 4 brothers. And please subscribe. It's a small thing for you to do, and helps us make more videos.